Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Joining me now, Nigel Lawson, Margaret Thatcher's longest-serving Chancellor. Nigel Lawson, welcome back to the programme.
Thank you, Andrew. I enjoyed your rant the other day.
It wasn't a rant; it was a carefully scripted commentary. But thank you for your remarks. Let me take an overall view at the moment of the Chancellor's position. Deficit reduction seems to be stalling this financial year. The October borrowing figures were pretty bad. Looks like he'll overshoot this year's borrowing. Is the Chancellor's austerity programme in trouble again?
It's very difficult. He's got a particularly difficult time because of these ridiculous protected programmes which shouldn't exist at all. It's very striking that one of them, aid, which is going up over again and again, the Nobel Prize for Economics has been given to Professor Deaton, an English economist, at Princeton, but he's British-Scottish, in fact. And one of his principal findings, he's a great expert on global poverty, and one of his great major findings is that overseas aid, though well-intentioned, does more harm than good, and yet that is going up and up and up. But no, he's got a tough time, but it can be done. When I was Chancellor, managed to balance the budget and get a surplus. He can do it too, and he's got to do it.
But he faces huge pressures in protected and in unprotected areas on security, on the police, the NHS. We've just been talking to Paul Johnson about mitigating cuts on the tax credit side. These are all hard to resist in the current atmosphere.
It's going to be very difficult, and I suspect that although it'll mainly be cuts in public and savings in public spending, I think he's going to have to do more on the tax side than he would have liked. And there's some logic in that. For example, it looks as if, as Paul Johnson was saying, or maybe you were saying, I'm not sure, that he's likely to some extent defer the cutting of the tax credits. It's quite right to get a knife to the tax credits. They've grown far too much and they're undesirable in their present size. But nevertheless, what he did propose originally was a bit too much for some people, and therefore he has got to maybe delay it a bit. But when he presented a package including the raising of the income tax threshold. Well, he could, as part of the package, delay that a little bit and help on the tax side.
Will he? The government has always said it's going to, all the heavy lifting in deficit reduction will now be done by cuts in spending rather than increases in taxes. But will he now have to look to some increases in taxes, perhaps at a time of low oil prices, on fuel duty?
Well, I think that's a very good suggestion. I think it is sensible to do that. But what I was suggesting a moment ago was not actually an increase in taxation, but deferring a reduction in taxation.
I understand, but
and
will
he
he
might
now
find
have
that
to
less
will he now
difficult.
have to look at some
I
tax
think
rises like fuel duty?
I think he should look at the fuel duty, yes.
President Hollande in France has said that national security now comes before deficit reduction. He's basically sidelined the deficit, the fiscal pact that he has with the rest of Europe. He plans a huge increase in security spending, some 17,000 more police and border guards, other security personnel. Won't the British be looking to Mr. Osborne to do something similar next week?
Well, President Hollande has never been keen on deficit reduction in the first place, and it's not unconnected with the fact, too, that the French economy, and I live in France, my home's in France, the French economy is in a pretty bad way. We are doing much better. But security is important, but the government has said very clearly that it is going to keep to the 2% target, 2% of GDP on defence spending, something that France is not doing, even though it has considerable defence expenditures.
The leaked letter from one of the most senior police officers to the Home Secretary says cuts to police budgets could, quote, reduce very significantly the ability to respond to a Paris-style attack. The Chancellor is going to be under pressure to make security more important than deficit reduction, certainly for the foreseeable future.
Well, security is essential. It's vital. But I think the police are complaining a little bit too much. Look at how much the police are spending now on chasing up often unsubstantiated accusations of historic sex abuse. That's got nothing to do with security. Those resources should be put where the need is. I think also what the police need is not just money, and the security services too. They need intelligence. And I think it will make a lot of sense. And what I would like to see the government doing is to expedite the passage of the Investigatory Powers Bill, which is long overdue and badly needed.
In this climate, do you accept that cutting the top rate of income tax back to the 40% that you originally introduced, that's politically impossible for the foreseeable future?
It depends how far you can foresee.
Say for the rest of this Parliament.
No, I would hope that during this Parliament it can be done. It is politically difficult, but there's no budgetary reason against it. When I cut it, it in fact increased revenue, and so it would do again. The cut which George Osborne's already done in the last Parliament from 50 to 45, even though the Liberal Democrats hated it, in fact it raised money, it didn't cost anything.
It's a tough political message though. I mean, what you say may well be right, but to be cutting police numbers, to be struggling to find money for the NHS, to be doing something for the working poor on tax credits, and are making life a bit more difficult for them, but then to be cutting the top rate of the highest earners.
Yeah, that's why I don't think he's going to do it just now. But you were asking about the foreseeable future.
So you still hope he will do it before the end of this Parliament?
I hope he will, yes.
On Europe, which you're now taking a leading role on the campaign to withdraw from the European Union, how are you confident are you feeling about winning this referendum?
Oh, nobody can call a referendum. It's difficult enough sometimes to call a general election. And a referendum...
As we know from a few months ago.
Absolutely. And referendums are even harder to call. I mean, logically, I don't think he's going to do this. Logically, of course, David Cameron, the Prime Minister, ought to be campaigning to leave. Because what he said at the beginning was he was dissatisfied with the European Union as it is. He wanted a fundamental reform to be enshrined in treaty change and then stay in a reformed European Union. There's not going to be a reformed European Union. There's not going to be a treaty change. In fact, what the referendum is going to be about is whether you want to stay in or leave an unreformed European Union. So logically, he ought to say leave. And that is where I am, because if it's unreformed, we don't want to stay in it.
So even if the Prime Minister was to get all his renegotiation demands, such as we know them at the moment, it wouldn't change your mind on coming out?
No, because if he demanded a lot more and got it, major reforms I've written about, we don't have time to go into them now, which I think would be welcome right across the European Union. It is the elites and the bureaucracy who are committed to this move to a single United States of Europe and everything which appertains to that. This is not the view of the majority of the people of Europe, but we can't tell the rest of the countries what to do. All we can say is what we're going to do.
As we get closer to the referendum date, we don't yet know when it will be, but as we get closer to that date once it's announced, in terms of who's seen to be the major figure who leads your side of the referendum campaign, if not Nigel Farage, who?
Oh, it's certainly not Nigel Farage. You will see. I think that the people who want to stay in, they've put up a businessman, Stuart Rose, not a particularly captivating businessman.
But the Prime Minister will lead the campaign.
But he will lead the campaign.
So who will be the equivalent?
I have no idea. We shall wait and see. But it certainly won't be Nigel Farage. It's not. I mean, he will be an important player.
Why not Mr. Farage?
Well, because the UKIP has just one member of Parliament. We're a parliamentary democracy, and the majority party is the Conservative Party.
All right. Nigel Lawson, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
I've been getting away with it all.